using Linux for how many years now?
Since 1995.
Wow.
But this was the first school that we did where Linux was the primary desktop solution. And we bought our cases on eBay for $16 a piece.
Wow.
And put in Intel motherboards. So the actual workstation, including the motherboard, the processor, the memory, the keyboard, and the mouse, total cost was $86 each. And then we spent the money that we saved on nice monitors, and they've been very reliable.
And how, now you said you have 30 machines in here?
There's about 30 in here, and then there's a lab in the library that has a bunch.
No.
And then the rest of them are just spread out. Every teacher, at the beginning, when we opened the building, I just said to teachers, how many computers do you want? Just come and get them. And they just plug them into the wall like a telephone.
So
there's no installation.
How big of a server are you using?
Or servers.
Servers, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we do notice that we do have like a couple of Macs.
Yeah.
And we have, there are 3 Windows machines. And that's primarily for some flash card readers and things need those, and for kids who need a floppy drive. Those are really there primarily for file access or doing special things on the scanner. And for the Macs, we use them for digital video editing, stuff like that. So what we did is with the money that we saved, if we needed a specialized computer, then we could go ahead and design it for that one purpose. So rather than make 1,000, maybe a little bit over the gigabit switch. So you get a lot of bandwidth and it doesn't cost much money. We set it up here so it'd be real easy because port 28 here is port 28 here. And then everything is labeled as far as the frame, panel, and it's right on the jack. So I can, if the teacher says that they have a dead jack, I can just go right to it and see what's going on. And the other thing we did is wired our phone system in so that every jack can also be a phone, and all I have to do is just plug in a phone wire to the jack, and that makes it real easy to do. And so this comes from years of being in a building where you've seen nightmare wiring closets. Yeah. So this I'm real happy with. So we have lots of bandwidth. That's one of the bottlenecks. The other bottleneck is memory. So since we're Riverdale High School, we have Archie, Betty, Veronica, and Jughead are our servers. Each one of these has 4 gigs of RAM, and it's a dual Xeon. These are 1.8 gigahertz with 4 gigs of RAM, and each one of these is designed to support 30 or 40 workstations and have those workstations be faster than what the kids would be using at home. And that was in 2002, and they still are today faster than what kids use at home. And so we're real happy with the speed. So 4 gigs of RAM to make things real fast. Now, the other bottleneck is the hard drive. Each of these has one IDE drive for its applications. And if you're running the home folders from an IDE drive, when you get to 10 clients, you just hit a roadblock and everything slows down. As soon as a client is waiting on the hard drive, it starts to domino. And you get a queue that piles up and the system just dies. So what we have is this older box down here is actually a quad Xeon with 500s. So it's more like a locomotive than a race car, and it has a SCSI RAID array for the home folder system. And probably 4 of those are in the SCSI RAID array. The others are operating system for this and a big backup drive that's in here. And so what this is our main, this box exports via NFS to each of these. And all of these computers have gigabit network cards, so they're talking to each other over that gigabit switch. And the only traffic that goes out on the network is the video display traffic, and that all travels over the megabit, the 100 megabit switches. So the NFS mounting, usually you wouldn't be able to get away with just having an IDE drive in your server. But because it's only launching the applications, and once an application is launched, it's most often called out of memory. The the first person that launches OpenOffice, it's going to be a little slow. The second person just comes right up. So this has worked very, very well, and these are all identical. And to configure them, it's really nice. If I wanted to add a fifth box, I just do a standard install, and I tell it to NFS mount the home folder. And the printings, this box handles printing, so I edit one line on the cups file, and these then point to this one for their printer, and we use the Open LDAP for authentication. And so I tell the server to use Open LDAP, and just those three things, and I have an instant server. And it's just the same as all the other ones.
Yeah, I'm a little bit. I don't know much about LDAP, but I suppose we'll learn.
But basically, LDAP is a database.
I understand that part.
And it will authenticate Macs, Windows, and Linux, workstations. But the nice thing is that I don't have to add users to any of these machines. And if something were to happen to the machine...
Oh, because they're all in that one LDAP database.
Yeah, right. So it makes adding or changing machines really easy. Now, if I were to take one of them offline, the other three just take up the load. And when users... it would be nice if we had a really fancy balancing system for balancing the load. But when our users log in, they just see the list of 4 servers. And it shows them how busy they are, and they just pick the one that's least busy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. You're not clustering anything.
No. No, we call it human dynamic load balancing. In other words, they pick. And they figure out how to do that. And sometimes the simplest solution is the one that works best. It's nothing fancy, it's nothing hard to understand, and it ends up working really well. Now, the biggest mistake we made was we had one extra box, and so I installed a Windows Terminal server on it. And when we opened the school, we paid $10,000, about $100 a workstation, to buy the licensing so people could run Windows Terminal services on their Linux machines. And it was kind of a crutch, so that if people had to do stuff with Windows, they could still do that. But just as time went by, it was used less and less and less. And now I wish that we had not done that. But maybe people would have panicked. I don't think so. But we won't upgrade it or spend any more money on that. And when it dies, it will just disappear and be gone.
So how many users in the building do you have? I mean,
how many students?
Yeah.
There are about 220 students, and there are probably 25 staff people. So our ratio is 1 student, well, 2 computers. This is 2 students for 1 computer. We also have a rolling laptop cart that is 25 IBM laptops, and they run Linux, the same version that these run, and they authenticate off of LDAP, and they mount their home folder from here, and they're wireless. So to set up one of those, the same thing here. I set up the printing, the password authentication, and I mount the home folder, and that laptop then gives them exactly the same desktop, exactly the same files as if they were on a thin client, but it's on a laptop. And we've been very happy with that solution. That's worked really well.
Wow. Yeah, this is
So nothing real fancy, but it's just very reliable.
Yeah. What you say? Nothing real fancy, and where did your servers? You had those custom made by somebody?
These are from Supermicro. And when you buy them from Supermicro, they come already assembled, and it's the server and all the hardware and the motherboard. All you do is you drop in your processor and you drop in your memory and slide in your hard drive. And these were basically ready to go.
What, they came without an OS, or?
Yes, they came without a hard drive. It's basically the case, the motherboard, the CD-ROM, and the floppy. And you put in your hard drive, and then you put in when I install your operating system.
So those are the ones that have the IDE drives in them, and
Yes.
they're using they're mounting.
Now these were donated by Intel. These were old boxes, and so they were just donations. And I thought that eventually we would replace them, but they're just running so well. This is our main school web server and runs our database stuff, and you know, it's just kind of a workhorse computer with 4 processors. It has about 2 gigs of RAM.
What vintage processor are those?
These are Intel Xeon 500s. So, how old is that? 6, 7 years maybe? Pretty old, really. And these are at the end of their 3rd year of service, right here. And I was thinking I would do a rolling upgrades.
Yeah,
everything out of it.
Right.
So it seems to work just fine.
There is a psychological.
And somewhat on. I downloaded the K12 LTSP distribution about 2 years ago, and I experimented with it. Got it running on a really small.
So half are in Portland Public, and Portland Public, it has its own IT staff. So a lot of what they do is quite separate from what the East County folks do. On the East County side, we have our big ones are Gresham and Reynolds, and they're each about 10,000 students. Portland Public, I think, is 52 or 53,000. And then we have a couple smaller ones. There's Centennial, Park Rose, and David Douglas, which are each like 5,000 to 7,000 students. And then we've got 2 small ones, which are Riverdale and Corbett, which are each 500, 600, 700 students.
What is the percentage, would you say, of base of Linux to other operating systems?
I don't really have any idea, and it varies per district. Riverdale is all Linux with a small handful of Macs and Windows. Then we have Gresham, on the other hand, who is predominantly Macintosh, and they have a couple small Linux labs just for online testing kind of kiosks. Actually, the worst one, not worse, that's the wrong term, the smallest number would be, I think, Reynolds, where they have 1 middle school and the parents put it in, not the district.
What do you mean the parents put it in? They put it in the network?
No, they put it in a lab using K12 LTSP.
And why did they do that? The parents did it themselves, or? And how big is the lab?
I think it's 20 or 30 machines.
And now, their servers exist locally, right?
They use a kind of standard configuration where they plug one network card into the wall as just a DHCP workstation, and the other one feeds the terminals.
That's what we're doing. Well, actually, I gave the one in the Ag Lab a static IP, just because I wanted to know exactly where it was. So I manage it with SSH. I actually use putty into it, and add users and whatever to it. So, well, that's interesting.
What would be your best guesstimate on Linux use out here as far as?
Well, so we got Park Rose is probably. I mean, we can go meet them later, and you can ask them directly. Because like I said, I just provide support. I don't keep track of who does what. But Park Rose and Centennial both, I think they have at least 1 lab in every school. But how that breaks down to what their percentage is, I'm not sure. Some of them, if you're looking at, and also if you're writing it down on staff versus student. So I think for student computers, both Centennial and Park Rose would be, probably just guessing 75, 80%.
Yeah, I see us like my short-term goal is to get this Dell server with about 30 clients on it, okay? When you told me I need 100 megs per,
And again, we always tell people high because you have the lab scenario, which is the worst case.
Yep.
We have, like one of the original installations of LTSP that Jim McQuillan did, they were running at some point, something by our standards would be ridiculous. It was like a dual P3600 with 2 gigs of RAM, and they had something like 150 concurrent users.
yeah,
But that's a business environment, which is, the usage patterns are much different than the school.
there was a guy that I talked to at Discless Workstations, and maybe that's him. That was Jim McQuillan?
May not have been Jim, but Jim is one of the co-owners of Discless Workstations.
Okay, 'cause
so
I was-
him one of his partners.
I was talking to one of the guys up there, and this was right around the time that I bought the 2 boot ROM cards, probably 2 years ago, and he said to me, yeah, he says, I got a Pentium 3 dual processor, like a P3 700, and a gig of RAM, and he told me how many clients he was supporting, and it was, I'm going to say 50 or 60 clients, and he was also doing DHCP, DNS, and Samba off of that box, and he said, I got to rebuild this. He says, I got to get a bigger processor, I got to get more RAM, I can only put a gig in this machine, and he says, and he was telling me, you know, like, this is all, like, not news to you, but once, you know, you begin to use swap, it's bad, it's a bad situation. So, but after listening to him, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, because on a Windows terminal server, you got to have a lot more, you're using a lot more resources, and obviously there's the CALs issue and all that other stuff as well. And I was really impressed just 2 years ago. I mean, here this little rig I had, which was not an ideal setup, was running on a Pentium 2. So I think my short-term goal is to get about 30 users this year.
And there's other things you can do also that, you know, by default we use the full rich, you know, GNOME or KDE environments. There's ways of cutting down significantly on the memory if you use ICE Window Manager. If you really want to cut it down, instead of using OpenOffice, use AbiWord and things like that. And you can have your memory requirements, which means you can get twice as many.
What was that first one you said?
ICE Window Manager. Yeah, it's actually installed. We can show you off my. You know, actually, we can grab your laptop and boot it up off the terminal server here. But we got, you know, when you log in, there's, you know, the bar at the bottom. There's a couple options. One, sessions. Yeah, well, you can go through and select a different session, and you know, the actual GUI environment you're in is adjustable on a per user basis.
Yeah, I've used ICE, and I've used, gosh, there's a real lightweight X out, is it like,
XCF.
yeah, XCFE or something like that. Does that cause any confusion among users at all?
Well, you pick the one that you think your users are gonna, you know, most appropriate for your users, and set that as your default. You can remove the others if you don't want them to use them.
So when you do that, is that in your system? Is that in your system control stuff on? But the root user has to do that, right? I mean, the
Right.
sysadmin.
Yeah,
And then that defaults for everybody else.
yeah, you can set what's available and set what the default is.
Okay.
And by default, you know, we give all the bells and whistles, which, you know, generally the out of all the options, the two that are popular are either GNOME or ICE. ICE is popular because it's lightweight, doesn't take much memory, and it's not really user configurable, not unless they're, you know, quite an advanced user. So
that keeps people from goofing around.
yeah, I mean, that's, a lot of people like it because they have, you know, you set it and that's what it is. That's what you get. The other end of the spectrum is GNOME, which there's also KDE and a couple other environments, but we found from our testing that the fewest questions we get, support questions, come from GNOME. So pretty much everyone's decided that's the default.
I like GNOME myself. But
Yeah, kind of a GNOME guy myself as well. But since everyone's configuration files are stored in their own home directory,
That's right.
then we don't have to worry about tightening everything down. You would in an environment if you have user 1, user 2, you know, have some kid download a dirty picture and put it on the background or something like that. If you have it with everyone with individual accounts, if someone does that, you know who did it because it's their account.
Yeah, right.
So we can give them free reign for customizing their desktops.
yeah, I like that. I would prefer not to go with the generics myself because of that. But one of the things I noticed too, now that you've mentioned that, is you have a way of blowing down, like I noticed configuration settings on the desktop, there's a little script that you wrote that sends all the stuff to a user so that,
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but
Right, like if you wanted to put a new icon on everyone's
Yeah.
desktop, something like that, right? And there's also one that we wrote for, if we allow people to customize their desktops, occasionally they screw them up. You know, they'll do, they'll delete all their icons or something, and
Yeah, right.
what do I do? So we, rather than having the administrator do it, we put a new session type that says reset your desktop. So they just log out, they log back in with that. It wipes all their configs out, installs the defaults, and logs them back in.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so we just show the kids, okay, if you screw up, just do this, okay?
Yeah.
what about like the case, let's say you get some kid who does something, because they're a kid, they download some junk, which would be tough because of our filter, but like yours, but let's say they somehow manage to defeat the system and they get something bad. What about their files? I know that we could actually like move them out as a root user, but is there like some quick way to do that if you had, I guess, can you do all that reconfiguration again without having to move their files around? Or like I was thinking, like I added the way I would do it, which is probably the slow way, but this is the way I would do it for now, is I would move those files, delete their user, then recreate the user and put the files back in there and that. But do you guys have any way?
Why wouldn't you just delete the offending files?
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, thanks. That's why I'm here. All right, good.
But, I mean, you
Okay.
could always remove their account.
Yeah,
remove
yeah,
all their
okay,
files.
okay. So ICE would give you some control over, the only thing I'm thinking, like, can you specify based on login or based by, say on group, on a group, if everybody in group, whatever group, like typing lab would get ICE and the other people would get GNOME or not?
Probably.
Well, I don't.
You can do anything, it's whether or not it's practical.
Yeah, I don't know. All I was thinking about was, like, for the typing lab kids, ICE would be great because they just open up Writer and they just type. It's just like the old days when I learned how to type. I mean, with a typewriter.
I think the easiest way of approaching that would be, the configurations are on a per server basis of what's available, and then the individual configurations are in their home directory, wherever that is, right? So what you could do is you could have different servers with different capabilities. So you could have a typing lab that booted off a server that just had ICE available,
Okay. Yeah.
right? But still have it mount their home directory.
Okay.
Right, so they still got the same files and everything, but just the server's capability is different.
Okay. All right. Well, it's maybe a moot point because those are just some questions I had about that. I think I know pretty much how to do everything. My big issue is DHCP, and I'm sure that'll resolve itself. I had even thought about putting a separate server in this room and just doing everything the way you guys have it out of the box. You know, have one have the one card coming out, you know, or bringing the inbound stuff in and doing that. But the only reason I don't want to do that is because we're a K12 literally, and I got some people in the elementary school who, a couple teachers in particular, who I already kind of got marching a little bit down the Linux road, and their kids like the performance, and they're familiar with the desktop, and this would be a really cool way for them to have users like in, you know, the old, what was that guy's name, Ted something, the one computer classroom, what was the, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was in the early days, it was in the Apple II days, and so in a classroom where we have maybe 20 kids, they have 20 separate accounts on there, they have 20 user files and all that stuff. It's much more easily accomplished this way than it is on a Windows box, because it just is. I don't know. I don't know if it's more easily accomplished, but I guess it's more manageable. You know, and then they're really off of our network. They're not really on, you know, a chance to compromise any Windows files, like from an administrative point of view. You know, I don't know if that makes sense to you. I'm talking Greek. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? No? All right, I'll shut up.
When we were downstairs, you said the Mac. What did you load on there that works really well?
Netatalk.
What's it called?
Netatalk.
Yeah.
Netatalk.
Yeah.
When we were downstairs, you said the Mac. What did you load on there that works really well?
Netatalk.
What's it called?
Netatalk.
Yeah.
Netatalk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to ask him. He
Would you be able
travels
to handle all that Samba and all that stuff too?
Samba and all that stuff. I don't know if he has any expertise in that.
Yeah, okay, because he's not really a school type.
Right. I mean, he's terminal services is his baby.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to find resources here. Otherwise, I'm just out there in
How tough
email land.
How tough of a deal is it to? Because another thought I had after seeing Paul set up yesterday was when you have laptops booting in, are the laptops actually becoming thin clients as well?
The way Paul has them set up, no. You can do it, but you kind of end up in a. Well, it depends. If you're doing it wireless, you end up with a chicken and egg issue. Of that, you have to have software. You have to have software to initialize the wireless, but there's no software on a diskless machine.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of pondering if you actually had a
They have a
laptop
floppy.
that was just empty, except for a wireless card. But then the wireless cards don't have any built-in ROM on them.
Right, so you have to use a floppy or a CD boot image,
Yeah.
enough to initialize the card, then the rest of the process
So
can
he's
continue.
logging in. He's got like Fedora or whatever on his
Installed locally.
installed
yes.
locally. But the user logs in. Let's say it's Don, for lack of a. So if I have an account on the through, I guess this is probably going to make sense after I say it, but I've got an account on your machine and I log in on a thin client as Don. If I log in on a laptop as Don, I'm going to get my files
Yes. Yeah.
because they're mounted.
Right, they mount the common file server and they use the common authentication.
So if I had some old laptops, if I opened them up, took out the hard drive, left in a floppy drive, went up to what? Where do you actually build the stuff on the
ROM-matic.
floppy?
Yeah, for the wireless ones, they actually have a specific boot image on the LTSP download site.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you build that on the floppy, put that in there, and the machine, tell the machine to boot from the floppy. Well, we do that anyway.
But what I was thinking about doing,
Be kind of interesting.
And newer ones like this that have the Ethernet built into it usually have PXE.
Yeah.
Like I have a you know, Pentium 2 laptop I use as my test terminal at home. I just hold F12 down
Try back in a couple
and it
weeks.
boots off the network.
I don't understand PXE.
I don't understand sales calls, but that's okay.
PXE, it's pre-execution environment. It's kind of an Intel specification that a lot of the firmware's in. It will send out a DHCP type request or a bootp type request, and then the DHCP server can recognize that, hand back an image that the most of the time they use a thing called PXE Linux, which is like syslinux. It's a network-aware bootloader. They can go fetch the kernel and the initial RAM disk and execute it. So you can think of it just as kind of a bootp setup, more or less.
So so you would probably not, probably to make it easier for most people, going with the Etherboot disk, or having the card in the back of a machine would be easier than having people hold down F12.
Well, if the laptop is capable of network booting, like I'm sure this one is,
Okay.
then you don't have to worry about it. You can just use it as a thin client. You just configure it in the BIOS boot off network, strip the hard drive out, and you're done.
So
Except being wireless.
Now, if you want to be wireless, then you got to jump through extra hoops because you have to initialize the wireless
Right.
before you can do anything.
okay, I guess I understand that. I just am not familiar with. I've seen PXE boot, but so if you set up PXE boot, even on a regular card, it would. You would.
Do you have a network cable? We'll plug in the wall and boot your laptop.
Yeah, I got a network cable. Have done, will travel.
The Linux server gave us MAC addresses and not the IP addresses. But then somebody told me I could find the IP address too using the Linux one. We just never got to that point. I mean,
So that would
I'm
probably-
seeing over my head.
That would probably work, but I think
I like that.
we ought to.
Media booking system. Do you guys supply media to school districts?
We had one. That's in our budget crunch. That was one of the first things that went.
What we do with this, we store a lot of video content in here. Let's say just a chunk of that. I don't know, maybe call it a few terabytes. I don't know how big that yet. And our districts come in, hit this web interface. It's a 480 interface of some sort each. They go through some menus and they choose their content that they want to book. They can either be shipped to them via courier trucks that we run, or if it's a video and it's something that we've already got in our library, it's already like stored out here someplace. They'll get that back. They can actually click on a link and it'll stream right out to them, right out to the workstation.
Then I don't know if you want to interview any of them individually or anything like that. But
Yeah, I guess you're going to lunch. If you want to tell us what you think about this technology. We're trying to do this in our area of the country, and it's brand new. No one else has done this. Do you like using this? And what do you like about it?
It's really easy to use.
And what do you do word processing, or what applications do you use?
Yeah, there's a word processor, there's the GIMP, which is a graphics tool type thing. Yeah, and there's a lot of different applications.
I see. Yeah. And what grade is this?
7.
7th grade. And how often do you get to come in here each week?
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, we have schools.
If you could use Windows, would you use Windows? You would. So you don't really care.
Well, actually, they're both pretty good. It's really hard to decide.
It's really hard. Oh, that's a fair thing. Cool. Yeah. Gee, thank you. Yeah, you have how many terminals are there here? 3, 6, 4. Yeah, awesome. What's your favorite sports team? You like the Blazers? Are you a basketball fan? Not really?
Assign a random password and then Dave will sort of dole them out.
Yeah.
It was a learning curve for us the first time around when we had the 5 random character password. And
Yeah, then we settled on 3.
yeah, we
made it a lot easier.
And it's better when it's consonant, vowel, consonant, or vowel. Consonant,
That's right.
you know, something
That way
like
you
that.
don't get.
List.
The list I gave you at the beginning of the assignment.
Part where you can sort of, you know, if there's any quirks to it, then you sort of.
And when I had the Mac lab, I actually had students physically fighting over who got the Emacs because it had all the good games.
Yeah, it seems like we've never been able to afford more than 4 or 5 computers a year. So for that lab, it was like you'd have, if you had 30 computers in the lab, you'd have 6 different groups of 4, and
Yeah.
you said they were all different.
How? No, that sounds like us. Because. Well, here we are in downtown Portland. Well, here we are in downtown Portland. Traveling down, what is this here? Interstate 84 East. Oh yeah. This is some beautiful country. Columbia River. Cool. Very cool. Yeah.
When we stop back there on the other side, we can take a shot back at that.
It's like, there's like a chapel or something up there. Maybe that's that vista. That, that Corbett house thing of it. That could be that. Oh yeah, look at that big place up on top here.
Yeah. It's maybe like an observatory or something.
Well, I think that might be that Vista place.
Yeah.
That's what I wonder.
Well, we can go across that way and see if there's any way up.
Well,
Just keep off, son.
what is that? That's Vista Rock Point, whatever. The Columbia River.
Mount for his digital.
What's that?
Bruce has got a mount for his digital that goes to his little telescope. And
I've seen that. You put your camera right on the telescope.
we're just looking at that.
There's a cool place over here. Cool. Crown Point State. Now look at this here. Crown Point State Scenic Corridor. Oh, isn't that lovely? Now I hope you can see how beautiful it is here. Ferry boat or whatever. This beautiful countryside here. Here, see how big these trees are. Woo. Yeah. We're on Highway 26 on the way to the Pacific Ocean. Oh. This is along Highway 26. On the way to the Pacific Ocean. High atop this barrier is Dave Stevens and Tom Lingenfelter guarding the car. Goes all the way up. I can't even see the top of it, I guess.
Got some great photos here too.
Cool. What's that?
Canyon Beach.
We could go, hey, that's the coast. We could go right up that street. There's Tom.
Shout out more.
Saw. Pretty cool. It might be, but you tasted it, it's a little salty, right? This is Cannon Beach. Again, looking from very close to the ocean. to evacuation room. There we go. A little sightseeing here in Cannon Beach.
Now I got to thinking before I turn the car in, I think I'll fill it because
I think you're supposed to, right?
Well,
Wasn't
they
that part of the deal, or
they
they
gave
can
you a choice.
they can whack you?
If you didn't fill it, they would charge you whatever the government would fill it. But if you fill it, you can find it cheaper at gas station. Fill it, and it doesn't cost you as much as what they would charge.
Oh, that's American Legion. There it is, to Highway 101. Bank of Astoria, ATM.